curious, the both of you, in terms of what you've seen, the differences in the Chinese market and the pockets of innovation there, Google and Microsoft have moved to China. Are we going to see, or which companies are we going to see migrate to the US with their inventions and internet-related inventions? And what kinds of innovations do you see that could be harnessed, if not by those Chinese companies, by you guys in the US?
Well, I think, so let me also answer both questions. The earlier one, I had another set of examples that are less frivolous, so that we don't think it's all games and entertainment. And those might help answer the second question too. I'll give two examples in export-related, basically arbitrage of consumer goods. Okay, one example is a company that a friend of mine founded, and he basically went to various parts of the manufacturing or handmade industries in China and found things that can be made much cheaper than the US. Then he would buy Google ads in the US in English, and then he would build up a reputation for himself and then sell the goods. An example is a wedding dress, right? I mean, some of you may have got married or have your kids get married. They probably cost several $1,000s in the US, but they're about $150 in China, handmade to your size. So he came up with a way where the bride can send her measurements and have the product made with shipment for maybe $400 or $500 shipped to your home within a week of Federal Express or UPS. So that's an example of innovative arbitrage of prices that will, I think, and that's one of hundreds and thousands of examples you can find. Another one that actually addresses the traditional manufacturing export problems today is there are some factories in Guangdong that used to manufacture for the foreign labels, right? These are high-end shirts, for example, and they're basically manufactured per specified by the US or European brands. And then, of course, the economic downturn forced them to close down. But instead of really closing down, they connected to an internet shirt manufacturer. So now they're turning this know-how of making high-quality shirts to sell for domestic supply at, a quarter or a third of the price. So, and then that's become quite successful. There are actually several cutthroat competing shirt manufacturers on the internet made to order in China now. So these are some of examples of, I think, business innovation, and that may relate to price arbitrage and may relate to China-US, may relate to domestic. I think fundamental paradigm shifts, breakthroughs, are going to be still quite some time, because I think the whole education system is still problematic in creating out-of-box thinking. But these kinds of business innovations, I think we'll see any day now.
Ya-Qin?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the Microsoft in China. We've been in China for 15, 16 years. And China obviously is a huge market for us, but it's also a huge talent pool. Lots of our basic research and the product development actually done from China. If you look at in Windows, Office, server, cell phones, the gaming, a lot of the core product development comes from China. So there's a lot of innovation that take place in China. We have over 3,000 just top caliber scientists and engineers in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. Some of the things we developed, actually most of the things we actually developed with the global product in mind. There are also things we actually developed specific for China, and later on became a global feature, a global product. One of the examples is short message, which is obviously used quite a bit in China. But if you use an Outlook, if you use Windows, it's pretty hard to send the short message in email. So one of the things we did in China is actually to seamlessly incorporate the short message into the email system. So it's part of your communication messaging. That feature, you will see that in the next version of the global product. There are lots of examples of that. But overall, I think lots of multinationals, Microsoft, Google, and Novartis are establishing R&D labs in China. And with this recession, in fact, China presents a lot more compelling value for those investments, not only in terms of cost, but also the proximity to the market, and the customers, and the talent.
If I may ask all three of you question about intellectual property. People have always raised the question, why is it that India can create a Bangalore, and why can't China, with all the, 1 billion, 4 people, and very many brilliant people, create a similar Bangalore in China? And some have said it's because the intellectual property rules are a disincentive, because everyone copies anything that you do, that you can't take, ownership of it or make a lot of money off of it. And Jeffrey, you being in the pharmaceutical industry, I imagine you run up against those kind of issues. What do you think about this? Why is there not more innovation? Why is there no Bangalore of China?
In the pharmaceutical industry, IP is critical, really, is what we depend on. And in this area, historically, there have been no protection for the patents of the drugs. And there was, for a long time, the market was dominated by generics. And also, I think the cycle of pharmaceutical research is very long, usually between 10 to 15 years. So historically, there has not been a lot of incentive for the Chinese companies to invest in R&D, in IP. And that really have contributed to a lack of, say, Novartis, a really innovative biotech company in China. But that's changing. I think the government realized that long term that innovation is critical. There's now a change. The government actually is making innovation one of the pillars of sustainable growth. So there is increasing recognition that IP is critical. And recently, I think there have been a lot of progress in enforcing IP, and you see the improvement in our field. That's also the reason that we now feel comfortable to build an R&D center in Shanghai. Compared to India, actually, we feel more optimistic about China than about India, because in the past, because of the language advantage and knowledge of, say, U.S. and European market, some of the Indian pharmaceutical companies have become quite successful generic manufacturers. They're like Ranbaxy and those companies that are global generic players. But because of actually weak IP protection for pharmaceutical product, I'm talking about specifically pharmaceutical product, in India, that we feel there's a bigger potential in China for pharmaceuticals than for India. And also there are now a lot of small startups in biotech companies. Actually, one of Ronnie's company, Morningside, invests in biotech companies. And there are now many small startups which are really at the beginning, but have very promising futures. And we are looking very closely at some of those technologies. And as Ya-Qin and Kai-Fu mentioned, there are many very good scientists there, and they are very good and very innovative. I think with the potential of really, being successful in the industry and making money, there's a lot of bright young people who are now coming into this industry. So I feel actually quite hopeful that we'll have not a Bangalore, we may have a Boston biotech area or some of the other biotech area in China pretty soon. So in that sense.
Yeah, sure. I think we need to step back and look at it, because IPR is an issue for everybody. But I think when you look at what's the priority for the Chinese government is social stability, which is employment. And when you look at employment, hardware is much easier to implement, to execute. All right, build a building, build a highway, build product. So China became the factory of the world because they want to keep the employment going. They can do that very quickly. They take a blueprint or they copy from someone. They can get a lot of people employed versus trying to go develop software. You need to have the education. You need to have the innovativeness. But so I think the government is focusing on first get the employment through hardware manufacturing. Now, as Jeffrey said, there's a lot of focus by the government try to catch up to the India lead they have. And they're going to put a lot of resources on innovation.